Assalamu alaikum. My name is Jaafar El-Hazred, and I'm an artist. And because I'm an artist, I meet interesting people. One of the most interesting people I've met is His Excellency, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lebanon, FARÈS Boueiz.
Look, this is my house where we are going.
Yeah. I met him because I was associated with attractive women. And I set up a memorable evening for Mr. FARÈS. A little later, he showed us some of his art.
You have here from Henri Matisse, okay, Marie Laurencin and Monet, Dali.
Yeah. And then his most precious mosaic,
Of Europe.
The Abduction of Europe.
And once he kidnapped her and she arrived to Greece, she gave her name to the continent Europa. Okay?
I made it my objective to find somebody with the same urge to see Europe abducted. It took me a decade, but now I have found him. Reactionary blogger, poet and philosopher, Kurtis Yarvin.
I can see it, I can see the Wagner troops marching with heavy tread on the Champs-Élysées, with their camo, drones are flying overhead.
I made time to visit Kurtis's wedding to get things going. After the wedding of Kurtis Yarvin, I presented him with a statue of Mr. FARÈS. And when I told him that FARÈS liked the idea of the abduction of Europe, Kurtis got really interested in meeting him.
The abduction of Europe is your favorite I see.
In the end, we all met in a nice restaurant in Paris. And His Excellency FARÈS invited us to his apartment, where he and Kurtis spoke about politics and the future of mankind. Let's have a look at their conversation.
Pleasure to meet you.
How much do you think, that United States can rule the world as a superpower, as an economic superpower, as a military superpower, and at the same time, not being fair in ruling the world? Because the ruler must be fair. The ruler is supposed to be a kind of judge. For example, the Americans funded the United Nations. And at the same time, America is made the largest number of vetoes in the Security Council against any decision of the Security Council. So at the same time, they create this Security Council, and at the same time, they are destroying the Security Council. So to which point the world is going to continue to accept this leadership, which is not so fair concerning many subjects.
So I have a complicated answer to that question, which is I can't really go back in time and find anything like a moment where I look at American hegemony, or I look even at the British hegemony that preceded it. And I would regard that system either as fair or as necessarily acting in the interests of Washington or even Britain. I would say that when we there's always a tendency when you basically sort of are within the frame and the mindset of a crumbling system like this. You go back in time and you're like, well, how did this system come to be? And, it's almost like the way Chinese historians or pre-modern Chinese historians used to think, where, there was a golden age in which everything was fair and good and just. And it's the memory of this golden age that's driving us into this age of brass, which is no longer fair or good or just. And where did we go wrong? You talk about the United Nations, for example. The United Nations was founded at originally called the United Nations Organization, because during World War II, the United Nations was actually used as a term just for the victorious coalition of the Allies. So they called it UNO at first. And the first, although he didn't actually have that title, the first organizing secretary general in San Francisco, but even before San Francisco, the original founding meeting was at Dumbarton Oaks. And when you look at the person who organized both the Dumbarton Oaks meeting and the San Francisco meeting, it was someone by the name of Allard Hiss. And I don't know if you recognize the name of Allard Hiss, but he later became notorious as a Soviet spy. And so when you look at the origins of this vaunted institution of the international community, you see that it comes out of things that are very ugly and very unfair, and the USSR was not a beautiful thing. This is Stalin's USSR. This is a power, guilty of essentially mass murder. The vision of the United Nations as it was created in realpolitik terms at the time, the U.S. did not view, American diplomats did not view the USSR as a competing power until 1945 or 1946 or so. They saw it as a satellite state, one that was a little bit crazy at times, but very powerful, and it just helped them conquer the world. Sort of the origins of the Cold War is that FDR really believes in the nature of the Soviet Union as his strong right arm, and he dies not knowing that Stalin did not intend to work for him at all. And that's what creates the world of the United Nations. And so in a world that's sort of framed by this mythical origin of the United Nations, in which we all came together to help save the world from Hitler and create freedom and all of that, then you see the present world and you see it declining from this mythical golden age. But if you go back and you actually read the diplomatic history of the period, you see that there was never a golden age, and it was never fair, it was never beautiful, it was always realpolitik, and it was much more ugly and powerful. And what I see basically when you see
I'm not so much romantic dreaming about
I know, I get it. I'm not saying, I'm not calling you a romantic. I realize that you're very cynical. I'm sorry, that was very insulting. That was very insulting. And so, but the thing is, people live within that frame. And so let me pose a different frame to this sort of decline of American fairness and American sort of justice in ruling the world. I think people perceive the strong as fair, and they perceive the weak as unfair. The tyranny of the lion is better than the justice of the mouse, right? And when the strong become weak, people start to ask these questions. Let me give you an example of this. So a few weeks ago, I was in El Salvador. And El Salvador has achieved one of the interesting miracles of our time, in that it has gone from the most dangerous country in the Western Hemisphere to the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. You can actually walk around any part of San Salvador at any time, day or night now. It's like it was China. How did the Bukele family accomplish this? They accomplished this by basically taking all of the advice they got from the American embassy and throwing it in the trash. And instead, they just did what they thought would work, and they had this observation: here's this country with this gang problem. Problem is the gangs. And fortunately, everyone who's in a gang has a gang tattoo. Everyone who's not in a gang does not have a gang tattoo. That makes it really easy to take 1% of the population and just lock them all up. And that's exactly what they did. And they did it fast, they did it very effectively, and they just transformed life in this country. And you go to San Salvador and you see barbed wire everywhere. There's all this relics of all this chaos and all this war, and the country just feels completely at peace. It's just a strange situation. Now, I was down there and I was giving a lecture to a bunch of people, and the president's brother, Yusuf Bukele, was there, and reportedly he liked my speech very much. One of the things I said in this speech was, I said, there's no way you could have gotten away with this 30 years ago. There's no way that the Bukeles could have gotten away with fixing El Salvador 30 years ago. because what would have happened is that the State Department would have come down on them like a ton of bricks. And the way in which the State Department, and one of the examples that I quoted was the history of a neighboring country, Nicaragua. So Nicaragua, as you may know, had a civil war in the 1980s, and the civil war started with the ouster of Nicaragua's longtime hereditary dictator, Anastasio Somoza Jr. And when the State Department went after him, it deposed him, and then 6 months later, he's assassinated in Paraguay by communist, probably CIA-backed guerrillas. But before he was assassinated by the communist CIA-backed guerrillas, he did something interesting. He published a book. This book is relatively hard to find, but it's out there. It exists. It's not a mainstream published book. And one of the things in the book that he did was when the State Department came to visit him, of course, he's speaking English, they're speaking English, he taped them. He taped them without their knowledge. And then he put the tapes in a book. This probably did not make him popular and may have been involved, maybe related to his reason for his premature, demise. But it was very instructive because it basically sort of pointed out these kinds of methods of soft power. And so one of the things that sort of, the State Department in its kind of strongest periods would do is they would adopt this, what my father, the diplomat, called the North Korean strategy of diplomatic negotiation, which is not taking yes for an answer. So when you're not taking yes for an answer, you come, the State Department comes to Somoza and says, look, he locked up this dissident. He went to he's a professor at Harvard. He has rights, we just want this one thing. Let him go. You give him the one thing, and then they come back and they ask for two things.
Anyway, rarely, the advices of State Departments were really helpful.
No.
Starting from Shah of Iran, where they advised
This is exactly what they did to the Shah of Iran.
Yeah.
They wanted one thing, then they wanted two things, then they wanted four things.
When they advised him to stop the SAVAG, which was
his
intelligence people, etc., and to respect more human rights and democracy, etc.
And they're just like...
They finished with the Iranian Revolution. In 73, 74, Henry Kissinger came to advise the Lebanese president at this time to let the Christians leave Lebanon in a way that Lebanon will be a Palestinian nation. And we will solve the Palestinian problem. And this was the advice of the, etc. After that, Dean Brown also came and advised Lebanese Christians, especially, to leave Lebanon, because you are a minority and you are bourgeois when you are going to fight against Palestinians who are poorer and they fight better than you, so leave the country, even. So I think that if you take the advices of the State Department, you will discover, at least at 95% of cases, that it was a real or premeditated catastrophe or unknown.
That's right. And so in the world of today, there are all of these countries that basically are learning in various ways that actually they are kind of a little more sovereign than they thought. And maybe the advice is just advice and maybe they can just ignore it. And so you see MBS, for example, doing all of these things that, the Ritz, right? No one in the State Department told him to do the Ritz thing, where he basically took all the rich people in Saudi Arabia and put them in the Ritz and hung them upside down until they gave up their foreign bank accounts. And yet that was a huge step in strengthening his authority over the regime, to say nothing of that little thing in the Turkish embassy, right? Again, not really in accordance with American thinking on human rights. And so you have this environment where all of these kind of leaders, if they're strong enough around the world, can are starting to discover that if they're becoming teenagers in a way. They're still very insecure. They're still very unsure of their power, but they're really telling America that it can go screw itself. And they can kind of get away with that is what they're finding. All right, here's a question. What do you think is the future of the Assad regime in Syria? Where's it going? You told me earlier that, maybe Bashar is not quite the same as Hafez. But
yes, sure.
Is that still a strong regime? Does it have a future? Where will it be in 20 years?
No, I don't think that it's a strong regime. And I don't think that the regime is still here because of its strongness. I think that the regime is still here because they didn't find any other alternative to this regime. Okay? This is very simple.
The Alawis had to fight.
Absolutely. They didn't find an opposition because the opposition was artificially created by foreign countries, by United States and by others. It wasn't a real natural opposition. Okay. They discovered one day that one guy, I think named Michel, who is a Christian, could be a leader of opposition. It's crazy. You cannot dream about a Christian being a leader of opposition, being a leader of a country who is one of the historical capital of Islam, the capital of Umayyad Khalifa. And so I think that the answer is very, very, very direct and short, that till now there is no alternative to Bashar al-Assad and his regime. And it's why I think that everybody realized that, and everybody is trying to build new relations with him. Okay. Most of the Arab countries, of the Gulf countries, are returning back to normal diplomatic relations. I know that some of them are already talking about helping him financially to rebuild Syria because
America's not going to do it.
Because Syria is totally destroyed, and is not viable. You can't live there. And so I think that they are starting to talk with him about that. And about the conditional return of refugees, or some of them. Okay. Now, this is the first step. Second, there is something very important which is happening in Syria, actually. I think that for one time, the interest of Russia and of America and Occidental countries are the same into pushing out, at a certain degree, sure, Iran from Syria. So Putin have two bases, main bases in Syria, Hmaymim and Tartus. Hmaymim is an aeronautic base for planes, where Russia have some very sophisticated Sukhoi 57 and have a group of their best aviators, war aviators.
I didn't know they had a Su-57 in the... Yeah.
And so they have this base. And to protect this base, as a conventional way, they have an SS-400 system of anti-aircraft missiles, which is a very
advanced,
perfect and efficient system. And so they have a naval base, which is Tartus, which is their main base in the whole Mediterranean. Okay. Now, what was happening during the last years, the strategic road from Iran to Beirut to the Hezbollah was from Damascus, was from eastern Syria. And then the Israeli aviation started to bomb them there. Because when I talk about the strategic way, it means this is the way from where they are bringing high personalities from Iran, high military personalities. This is the way from where they're bringing weapons and sophisticated missiles. This is the way from there where they are bringing money, etc. And so Israel started to bomb them. So when they discovered that Russia built it on the western part of Syria, near the Mediterranean coast, these two bases, and that these two bases are protected, Hezbollah supposed that it's a safer area. So they changed their strategic way. Now they were since many years, since 3-4 years, nearly, they are starting to use this way, which is exactly at the doors of Hmaimim base and Tartus base. And so the Israeli followed them and bombed them. And so the Israelis started to bomb the doors of these Russian bases. So then the military, Russian militaries, the Russian generals, start to tell Putin that it's not a way. We cannot stay like that and thinking that the Israelis have the right to bomb us, to bomb just near us. What if there will be an accident, etc.? They can destroy our best planes. They can destroy, kill our best aviators.
And the Russians have to choose not to shoot.
Yes, yes. And so, or give us the right to use our SS-400, or stop the Israelis from another point. And so, Putin doesn't want to war with Israel. So, he tried to tell them, wait a little, etc., they're not going to bomb you, etc. Till the day that a plane coming from Russia to take some aviators who served there and to bring some new aviators. So when we are talking about aviator of Sukhoi 57, we are talking about the best aviators there. So the plane coming from Cyprus at a moment where Israeli planes were bombing near these two bases, were bombing the strategic road from Hezbollah, a missile went to this plane and this plane exploded. And then we were very close to a direct clash between Russia and Israel. And then you can see it, I think that it's even on YouTube, etc., you can see it, the very hot discussion between the defense Russian minister and the Israeli defense minister, where they insulted themselves, where they threatened themselves, where the Russian threatened to destroy all Israel, etc. And using, you don't know how many nuclear bombs we have, and where the Israeli were responding.
Like, you don't know how many nuclear bombs we have.
The best aviators in the world. We can destroy Moscow, etc. So there, Mr. Putin had to react. And he started a lot of pressures on Bashar al-Assad. In a way that, okay, you have to choose between us and the Iranians. You have to lower the level of the Iranian presence and of Hezbollah presence. And as you know, it's not easy for Bashar. First, Bashar is not in a position to ask Iran to go out from Syria.
Because he gets a lot of support from Iran.
Yeah. No, Hezbollah fighted in Syria as well as better than the Syrian army. Better than the Syrian army. And maybe the fact that the regime is still in power is related to what Hezbollah made there. Okay, Hezbollah didn't make that only for the regime in Syria. He made that against Daesh in this war between Sunni and Shia. Okay, they made that to counter the Sunni attack. Okay.
Right. Daesh being ISIS, what we usually call
ISIS.
Yeah.
But it's the same result. So Bashar al-Assad is in a very complicated position. So what he chose to do, I think that he chose to tell the Israelis, okay, go on and deal by yourself with the Iranians and Hezbollah. And even some are accusing the Syrian regime to give technical informations about the presence of the Iranians and the Hezbollah there. And it is how the Israeli drones and the Israeli rockets succeeded in killing a lot of people, and one of them, the commander of the Revolutionary Guard in Damascus, who gave the informations by GPS at what time he will be at this place, etc. So, at a point where now this problem is increasing, and from each day to another, they are becoming suspicious. Who is giving informations to Israel? It's not only the Mossad, it's also the Syrian regime. There are a lot of changements in Syria. The closest, they said that it was a car accident. I don't know how, but in Syria, car accidents are always happening to very important political personalities.
It's a lot of bad driving.
Yeah. So, and bad roads.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she was killed. Okay. The main chief of security in Syria, Ali al-Mamluk, who was a great lord in Syria till some weeks ago, suddenly they decided that he is becoming very old and is totally, in 24 hours, leaving his position, all his positions. It's not as usual in Syria. So I think that there is a silent war in Syria, where Bashar al-Assad is obliged by the Russians to control Iran and Hezbollah, and is also listening to Saudi Arabia and to Gulf countries and to United States to control this Iranian presence. It's why I'm saying it's a rare place in the world where you can see the same Russian and American interest or position. So I think that if you follow what's happening in Syria, they are going to a certain point where they are going to reduce, let's say, the influence of Iran and to reduce the influence and the presence of Hezbollah. So it started nearly 2 years ago, okay? I was the first talking about that 2 years ago. I think that now it's becoming evident. It's becoming very clear, okay? And everybody is following that. So, after all what happened in Syria, I think that it's become difficult for Iranian officials, military officials, to come to Syria. It's becoming difficult for Hezbollah also to receive their guests in Syria. Okay? So I think that this is a very, very important question which can have a huge role into changing the balance in the Middle East.
This is, this kind of thing, FARÈS, this kind of thing is why people are so fascinated with the Middle East. They engage themselves in the stories of others, and there's this magnetic draw to the Middle East. Let me tell you a story. So my aunt, who does not speak to me because I'm a bad person and have bad politics, but my aunt is obsessed with the Middle East. She has no Middle Eastern blood whatsoever. She is an absolutely...
Why is she obsessed?
It runs in our bloodline. My great uncle, Peter Heath, was the provost of AUB. And
really?
later he was the chancellor
really?
of the University of Sharjah. And then he got a brain tumor and died. But the experience, one of the things people miss about the Middle East, and I think that even Arab nationalists underplay this to some extent, is there's this very deep interaction of actually Protestant missionaries in the Middle East. So the Protestant missionaries establish AUB, which is very old. It's a 19th century institution. They established Robert College in Istanbul. What is it in Cairo? There's an equivalent place in Cairo. And, these missionaries came to the Arab world to preach Christianity, and specifically a certain kind of Protestant Christianity that's sort of very different from the historical Christianity that was already there. And then these Protestant missionaries come to the Arab world. Okay, and they come to teach Protestantism, and they find, and this happens all over the world, the same thing happens in China, where they come to teach religion, and they're undergoing the same change that the Protestants underwent. In America, they're becoming secular. And so they start to, instead of teaching Christianity, they start to teach Western values. And so if you basically follow the history of, say, AUB, these Christians from Massachusetts show up, and they basically they go from teaching Western Christianity to teaching Western values. And they find that teaching Western values to Muslims, to everyone, sort of turns into evangelizing. Essentially, it turns into a kind of evangelizing nationalism. And so you see kind of roots between, and the nationalism they're evangelizing, it's like, there's this great essay in this book, the Chatham House version, by Elie Kaddouri, which I recommend very highly, which is basically kind of teaching the roots of this struggle. And there's a fascinating, one of the essays in the Chatham House version is about the Armenians in the Ottoman Empire. Okay, and that was a problematic situation in a number of ways. And of course, once you stop this sort of dubious activity of trying to convert the Armenians who are already Christian to Christianity, and you start converting them to Western values, Western values, which are basically Massachusetts Protestantism without the religion, Elie Kaddouri asked this very difficult and disturbing question. Okay, we know that the Armenian genocide happened. We know that it was a thing. But the question of why did the Armenian genocide happen is really seldom discussed. It's sort of assumed, well, the Armenian genocide happened because they were Turks and did crazy Turkish things. Well, the Turks had been living pretty harmoniously with the Armenians for about 700 years there. So why did they suddenly start going crazy and killing Armenians? Well, if you basically look at the history there, what happened was these Westerners come to the Ottoman Empire, and they're sort of
Changed.
And they're associated with the Western missionaries have, of course, political connections in a way.
Suddenly, the Armenians became foreigners for Turkish.
And they became foreigners because you had, the millet system, right? The millet system, right? So the Armenians are living under the Ottomans. They're being self-governed under the Ottomans. And these Westerners come and tell them, no, you need Armenian nationalism. You need to start planting bombs and, doing all of this stuff. And the Turks are like, what the hell? And the Armenian, the old Armenian, like, patriarchs, the people who thrive under the Sultan, are like, what the hell? And this sort of culminates, in the end game of World War I with this idea that many had of let's create an Armenian state.
So it's why, my friend, always when there were Occidental personalities coming to give me advices, I was saying to them, look, we are living in this Orient since 2,000 years. You don't know it. We know it better than you. So let us take our own decisions, and let us still Oriental Christians, and it will be okay for us.
Yes.
Please don't interfere in our questions. We like Occident so much. We like your culture. We are speaking your languages. Your language is also English and French and etc. And we like you so much, but please don't give us political advice.
Because the political advice leads to the destruction of the Armenians.
Absolutely.
And the absolute destruction.
Always the political advice, especially of Americans, destroyed all their friends in Orient, etc.
Well, they're now destroying all their friends in the Ukraine.
Always.
So,
That's going really well.
That's going really well in the Ukraine, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. No, it's funny, but it's a tragedy. It's black humor.
And I think that they are pushing Ukraine to suicide.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Ukraine, and here there is another aspect I wanted to talk with you about.
Tell me.
Is that Occidental countries are really pushing Russia to a third world war, a nuclear world war. They don't understand that they didn't have to take so much profit of the falling down of the Soviet Union. They took too much profit. They left nothing for the Russians. They don't know that Russia cannot be a democracy. Russia, because of its geography, because of its ethnic components, because of its climate, cannot be a democracy.
I think they're very lucky. I think we are very lucky in which I don't think we are strong enough to make that third world war. I think that actually the fact that the West is losing that war is a stroke of luck.
They didn't have, nor to push Ukraine. And I was always saying that to Katerina, never to push Ukraine to be part of NATO. Okay? Never. You have the experience of your ballistic missiles in the Cuba crisis, when you put your rockets on the borders of Soviet Union in Turkey, and where the Soviets responded through sending nuclear rockets to Cuba. So it is the same story. You are pushing Ukraine, first of all, to be member of Europe. It cannot be fully. It can be very close to Europe. You offered to Lebanon to be part of Europe 20 years ago. You know, I told them, we have a lot of interest with you. Culture, economic, etc. But we cannot forget our identity. If we become a European country in this Middle East, we will become an enemy for all these countries. We don't want to be a foreign, how do you say, foreign
satellite. Satellite. You don't want to be another crusader state.
And so they were obliged to create for us a special formula named the Association of Euro-Mediterranean countries. So saying by that some Mediterranean countries which are close to Europe, have the right to have access to this, to this conference, okay? And we made it, okay? And there was a special formula named Euro-Mediterranean Association. So we were considered to be an associate country, but not a European country. So what I'm saying is that you pushed Ukraine too far to be member of NATO. Russia will never accept that. You pushed Ukraine to be member of Schengen, of European countries. It's difficult for Russia to accept that. And you are giving the feeling for Russia to be encircled, by you.
It's as if Iran took
when
over
you have
Texas.
to understand that Russia can only be ruled by a dictatorship. She cannot be democracy. Where you have to understand that Russia cannot accept, only a strong man can rule Russia. If he is not enough strong, he will fall down from the interior, okay? And so you are pushing too far, and you are pushing Ukraine to suicide. Okay.
Pushing Ukraine to suicide is better than pushing the world to suicide. And the fact that Russia is now winning the Ukraine war is like saves the world. Because if Russia was losing the Ukraine war, there's no telling how they would escalate. And
if Russia is going to lose Ukraine war, I'm nearly sure that Putin will use atomic bombs.
Yeah.
Putin cannot stay in power unless he is acceptably strong. Anyone in Moscow who is weak is falling down internally. You know what Khrushchev said to John Kennedy when Robert Kennedy came and proposed to the ambassador in Washington, the Soviet ambassador, start to release your rockets from near Cuba. The ambassador told him, before talking to Khrushchev, I want to tell you that from my point of view, Khrushchev will fall down. Khrushchev will fall down before answering you, before giving you an answer. If you are asking that, it means that you want Khrushchev to fall down and you prefer to talk with militaries in Moscow. Go on. It's no more my job. It's no more my job.
And they gave up the U.S. missiles in Turkey.
So they had a secret agreement.
The Americans did not know.
To take off their weapons from Turkey, which were encircling Soviet Union, and that gradually Moscow will take off its rockets from Cuba. And it is how it was solved.
It saved the world.
The two had to. But the fact is, Russia is continuing to be ruled as an empire. And you cannot change now this situation. If you are making the ruler of Russia so much weak, he will fall down from the interior. He cannot rule his country. When you want to rule a country like Russia, you cannot be really a ruler of Moscow, okay? You have to appear as being the ruler of an empire. You have to be like a czar.
You have to be like
you have
monarch.
Okay. Now I'm not asking the West to give Putin all this power, but I'm asking them to let Putin show that to his people to control. Okay. Sometimes if you have to make a real peace with your enemy, you must accept that your enemy have to be strong to make peace. If your enemy is not strong enough, he cannot make peace. You will have somebody who is very weak. So I want, as last story for tonight, 1990, as I told you, President Bush wanted to make a peace process, etc. So he asked his state secretary, James Baker, to engineer a peace process. The ambassador in Beirut came to me and told me, please, I want you, okay, James Baker is a great lawyer, he's a very intelligent man, he's a very strong man, but he have not so much experience of the Middle East till now. So I want you to help him. And not only as a foreign minister, but as a friend, to give him some advice, even if it's not your position as a Lebanese government. Okay. So we started a relation, and we were talking many times per week, and etc., till the day where the ambassador came to me and told me, look, I think that all...
The American ambassador.
The American ambassador, Ray Crocker.
Chester Crocker? Chester, yeah.
Not Chester.
No.
Ray... not Ronnie, not Adam.
Yep.
Crocker.
Yes.
Okay. Who was after that ambassador in Iraq.
Right.
Okay. So he came to me, Crocker came to me and told me everything is ready, and I think that James Baker wants to deliver to you the invitation for the peace conference which we held in Madrid. Told him, very good. So when did they want to come? He told me, but he cannot come to Lebanon. I said, why? What is he doing with other countries? He told me he is going to visit other countries to give them the invitation, the written invitation of President George Bush. But for Lebanon, he cannot come here because he have no security clearance for his plane to land in Beirut airport because of Hezbollah. Okay.
Right.
I told him, okay, but in such a case, I cannot accept that I be treated differently than others. So if it's like that, I will not go out of Lebanon to meet him. Don't think about that. He told me why he can come very close to you here, to Cyprus, etc. I said, no, I will not meet him outside the borders of Lebanon. It's okay. Next day, he came to me, he told me, I have arranged that you can meet in Cairo, in Egypt. I told him, no. I told you I will meet him only in Lebanon, okay? And even not in the American embassy, which is considered to be an American land, okay? Anywhere in Lebanon. So, and look, my friend, I was talking to Ryan Crocker.
Right.
I was telling him, look, my friend, if it's impossible for him to come here, let's use the diplomatic ways. So you bring me the invitation, and at the same time, our ambassador in Washington will receive the invitation at the same time.
Protocol.
And so it's a classical diplomatic way. So it's the only other solution. But I will not meet Baker outside Lebanon. Every day, Ryan Crocker was coming. Okay, so Istanbul, Ankara, Amman, Cairo, Cyprus, Athens. Every day he was coming with a new proposal, and every day I was saying no. And during this time, all the medias were writing about that. And no diplomatic crisis between Beirut and Washington, etc. And, you know, we were going out from a war, we were very weak, And the Lebanese were against me. You know, our minister is arrogant, is etc. How can we defy the American government, etc.? We don't have to do that, etc. So I had a lot of problems with the President of the Republic. I was disputed because of that. He was telling me, do you think that now in the beginning of my mandate I can have a problem with America, etc.? It's not a problem. It's a story of respect to our national identity. This Mr. Baker is going to visit all Arab countries in their capitals. We are the only country which is asked to go out. Anyway, this is my resignation. No problem. So find another guy who will go. But it was too late. They couldn't. It was so. One day, because when Americans want something, they have no rules, no ethics for that. When they want to have, etc. So all our ethical considerations fall down. And you know, Lebanon was under the control and power of Syria. Syria was predominant there. But I had a very special, and I don't know how till now, relations with Syria. I was the only Lebanese official who went immediately when I was named Minister of Foreign Affairs to Hafez al-Assad, telling him, I am from a political family who doesn't like to deal with military politically. Especially if these military are not Lebanese, and especially if they are from intelligence services. So he told me, what do you propose? I told him that my relation will be only with you. And during 9 years I was Minister of Foreign Affairs, nobody from Syria, I swear it, talked to me. Nobody had the courage to talk to me. Hafez al-Assad took the phone and called his intelligence chief, etc., and told him the relations of Mr. FARÈS Boueiz, Minister of Foreign Affairs, will be directly with me. So the foreign minister of Syria called me this day, telling me, Mr. Minister, President Assad asked me to tell you that if you want to receive your guests, means Baker, so the Sheraton in Damascus will be at your disposal. And we will relieve from it all signs of Syrian authority or etc. The photo of Hafez al-Assad will be released, the flag, Syrian flag, etc. And you can even bring with you any security you want to control all the hotel, and bring the Lebanese army to Damascus. Imagine.
This was not a thing that happened.
I told him, I thank you very much, but as you know, I already took my decision. I will not meet Baker outside Lebanon, even if it's in Syria. And I have no intention to return back from this position. Okay. And I called the ambassador, American ambassador. I told him, look, Ryan, if you think that it's an offer I can't refuse, you are wrong. I refused it. And if you are going to insist, I'm going to make it publicly that the United States are asking me to meet with them in Damascus. If you can afford that, go on. He told me, no, please don't. Now, next day, another call from Prince Saud Faisal from Saudi Arabia, telling me His Majesty, the King, asked me to tell you.
That would be King Fahd?
King Fahd.
Yeah.
If you want to come for a visit to Saudi Arabia, it will be a very good occasion for the assistance of Lebanon, money, and in electricity, water, roads, etc. I told him...
And James Baker might show up.
No. He didn't talk about James Baker. I told him, look, if it's a normal invitation, I am absolutely ready to make it immediately. Now, I heard that you are going to receive some foreigners, so James Wick. So if it's related to their presence, I don't like to tell the king that I will not meet with them once I will be in Saudi Arabia. So please, if it has nothing to do with your visitors, I'm ready. If it's related, maybe it's better. So he told me, I'm going to inquire about that. And so it was in 1991. At this time, Rafiq Hariri wasn't prime minister. He was a very important businessman in Saudi Arabia. And they had billions. Okay. And so the president of the republic, same day, called me. When we were no more talking together since 1 month because of this story. So he called me, told me, can I see you at 6 in the evening? I said, yes. I came to him. They opened the door of his office, and I saw for the first time in my life, I didn't know him before, Rafiq Hariri. Rafiq, very proud of himself, very, etc., thinking that he is an economical need for Lebanon at this time. And the president who gave him the floor. So,
is this Aoun, the president?
Do you know Sheikh Rafiq?
Sheikh
Rafiq. So Rafiq is not Sheikh. He's Mr. Rafiq Hariri. He's not Sheikh. And said, I know, no, it's the first time we are meeting. So Rafiq told me with arrogance, you know, through your refusal to go to Saudi Arabia, you are making Lebanon losing not less than $4 billion of subventions. I looked at the president, told him, look, Mr. President, by constitution, you, President of the Republic, have no right to ask me questions in your office. By our constitution, you have to meet the Council of Ministers, okay? And in the government, we discuss my policy. Or you approve it, or you resign me. By vote, you have to vote by the 2/3 of the members of the Council of Ministers. So if you don't have, Mr. President, this right, I don't know from where Mr. Hariri took this right. So I'm leaving. No, wait. Then Hariri changed his style. Told me, you know, Mr. Minister. I said, yes, Mr. Hariri, not Jay. Okay, and no, yes, Mr. Hariri. He told me, maybe you didn't understand me because I was thinking about water, electricity, etc. I told him, yes, but the difference is that you are a businessman. You are accustomed to take any agreement in any way. I am a politician. For me, it's more important to be respected by the world first, and then to give our people electricity, water, etc. Because if we give them water, electricity now, they're going to destroy it. If there is no confidence in this country. So it's why I refused to go to Saudi Arabia, because I understood that he is coming to take me. Okay?
And that offer would never have been there had you not refused so many times before.
And so I told him, anyway, I don't advise you to succeed, Mr. Hariri, because if you succeed where a minister, prince, son of a king failed, I don't think that the Saudis will like that. Okay? Because in the mentality of the Saudis, they will fuck Hariri. Okay. So he panicked. And, okay. Then, next day, at 7 in the morning, Ryan Crocker Court, I told him, look, Ryan, I think it's enough to see each other because we are just exciting the press and the media. And I think that he told me, no, Mr. Minister, I need to see you. I have something new, very new. Said, okay. So it will be in my house in the mountain, okay, at 8 in the morning, without any journalist, without any press. He came to me. And he told me before we salute even, he told me, this, I know how you use that in America. It's coming. I said, who's that? He told me Baker. I said, where? He told me wherever you want. In Lebanon. I said, really? Come on. So this is new. Where I told him how he's coming. He told me he's coming by land from Syria. So we changed the problem of the plane
Airport,
in the etc. He will come by car from Syria. And where do you want to receive him? I told him in the house of the President of the Republic in the Bekaa, near the border. So it will be easier for him. And I will...
But that's also Hezbollah territory. That's also Hezbollah territory.
No. At this time, the Syrians were...
All right.
And so, at this time, Hezbollah was not so how do you say... strong there now. It was 10% of what is now. Okay? 10%. Baker came, and we took him to the house of the president in the Bekaa, and he brought me the invitation. He brought to the president an invitation of President George Bush. So I was talking with the president, telling him, don't take from him anything. Let me deal with him, because you don't know what is in this invitation. So we agreed that the prime minister and the president will not interfere, that they will just say him hello, welcome to Lebanon, we want peace, etc., and stop. And so he took out his invitation. I read the invitation, and immediately, before the president talked to him, told him, Mr. Baker, I'm not happy to tell you that we cannot accept this invitation. We are inviting us without any mention of the 425 decision of United Nations calling for a full withdrawal of the Israeli army from Lebanon, when Lebanon was 10% of our territory was occupied at this time. Second, you are inviting us without telling us what we will have to do with all the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon. We want a solution for them. I'm not asking to return them back to Palestine or not, but you have to find a solution as an international community. You take them, you give us every year 10,000 visas for them, etc. They will disappear in 10 years. I don't know. But I cannot go to a peace process conference without a title named Talks About Palestinian Refugees. And three, you are asking me to talk about economy and normalization, normal relations with Israel. I cannot sit on a table and talk about hotelry, about restaurants, about common economic projects when there are people who are killed in the south. So we can talk about that once Israel will totally withdraw from Lebanon, then we can talk about that. But we cannot talk about that at the same time where they are fighting in the south. And so when I was taking him back to the border after lunch, I told him, Mr. Baker, you have to understand that if you want to deal with somebody, you have to respect him. It's why I refuse to go and to see you outside.
And he understood that perfectly.
You have to understand that I have to be strong to negotiate with you. If I'm not strong, you don't have any interest in that because I will fail from inside.
What did he say?
He told me, I understood that. It's why I'm here. Okay. So what I want to say is that with Russia, it's the same story. Okay. He cannot rule, Putin cannot rule Russia if he is not a strong man. You have to leave him something. You don't have to be victorious through taking from him everything like you made with Gorbachev. Okay, have you seen what happened to Gorbachev? Gorbachev began a kind of traitor in Russia because he was so weak with you. And so, leave it to another moment. Now,
Make it a happy one. Not
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.